Horacio, thank you so much for being with us again.
Very welcome. You're very welcome. It's
always
being home. It's like being at home.
We go back a long way, and of course, since the first time you came to KoSA way back, probably 18 years ago or something.
It was the very first one.
Oh, maybe the second one. Yes, the second one. That's right, the second one. And ever since, of course, you've been there a number of times. And now I see you often in Havana, which is wonderful.
Yes.
I wanted to ask you, what is the main thing that you've seen as far as development or evolution in the past 15, 20 years since you've come? I'm going to compare it to our experience in KoSA, but also like having left Cuba, the understanding of Cuban music and how people are approaching it now, and where it has gone from where it was back then, and people like yourself who has been a strong proponent of Cuban music in the traditional sense, but also in the jazz context. And your voyage throughout this.
Certainly the level of understanding and the level of rhythmic possibilities and rhythmic education and rhythmic assimilation of the people is a lot greater. I was actually surprised this time around how better all the students are today. Certainly they have, the population have a lot of better rhythmic education today than what it had 20 years ago. Certainly and for sure in the case of Montreal, and not only Montreal, because you have been doing this camp almost all over the world, but I will say that KoSA is, of course, responsible for all this rhythmic and musical education that makes people assimilate a lot better these days. Definitely, you guys have done a great job with it. And you can see it. It's wow. I was freaking out this time around, seeing how the people is a lot more familiar with all these, rhythms from all the parts of the world and stuff, even in Glen classes or the African class. It's like people understand rhythm a lot better these days. Yeah. It's great.
Yeah, and of course, for me, it's the design. Although I started as a rock drummer and then went on to classical and then jazz and world music and studied ethnomusicology as well. For me, I didn't see the difference between one music and another except the context and the style. And I thought, as drummers and percussionists, it would be a real shame for us not to be paying attention to the other side. And I force marimba players to play drum set, frame drums players to play drum set, and everybody to take up African, Cuban, because they're all related. I don't see the difference.
Definitely. I think it's the drum set. It is a very, if not the best, it's the best percussion instrument to understand rhythm itself, just for the fact that we use our four limbs, and actually our fifth limb, that is our ears, at the same time that we're playing with our four limbs. So it gives you another perspective of rhythm. It's not the same than just playing with two hands. You can hear four sounds at the same time, and then you can hear four sounds mixing with each other all over time, So it's great that every percussion player should play drum set, as well as every drummer should play percussion too. It's a different understanding of rhythm. It's very important for us drummers to understand the relationship between the sounds of all the percussion instruments family. How they have very high sounds that we can imitate, for example, with our hi-hat, and how they have very low drums too, that is our bass drum, and everything in between, that is our toms and bells and blocks and everything we use on a modern drum set these days.
Right. And in your travels, what is the thing that you're seeing that's been going on in the last few years? Of course, every generation has a whole new set of values, whole new set of challenges to technology always challenges certain things, but musically, I see it. I mean, there's strong playing going on, more interest, and technology has in some ways brought us together. But the music, the traditional music from everywhere, from Cuba, Brazil, Africa, the traditional playing of drum set, from where you're coming from, what have you been seeing?
Well, I don't know. In one side, it is great, and another side is a little bit sad. It's a little bit sad that newcomers, new drummers, new percussion players today are only and all about speed and not about making music too much. So that's one of the sad sides. Another sad side is that I feel that modern music, the young music, is very divorced from understanding. They are not trying at all to be understood by anybody. They just play, I don't know, music in 21/8 with 5 bars of 3/4 and a bar of 9/11, and of course nobody understands nothing. And I don't know. I think that music is all about being connected to people, connecting people, and communicating with people. So that part is a little bit sad. Maybe the electronic part of the game is a little bit sad too. It's a lot of people that don't even play anymore. Now it's a DJ instead of a drummer. Now we have a DJ not only instead of a drummer, instead of a whole band, we have a DJ. But it's the times. I don't know. I think and the good side is that I think that music can be mixed with all of that, and probably from where something new will come. From mixing the music that we're still listening on the radio these days because it was such a good music. The music from the 80s and 90s, 70s, 80s, and 90s was so good that is what we're still listening today on radio. And all of that mixed with these new technologies and these new speeds and these new things probably will develop in something very interesting. In the meantime, we're gonna keep trying. It's not over at all.
Right. I mean, nothing. I mean, it's not the end of anything. It's like new beginnings all the time, and I'm sure you've seen it. For example, in your own voyage, you were you grew up in Havana and then left and were in Italy and then in the States, and then you began your own musical voyage, and now you're back in Havana but touring the world. So tell us a little bit about that kind of trip and how it has changed you and your view of music.
Well, Cuba is a little bit special in that sense. In Cuba, we still have so much of the tradition and so much of a great foundation that even the young guys that are there cannot avoid being overseen and criticized and pushed by the old generation, by the great masters that we have like Changuito or Enrique Pla. So we kind of have a very special musical situation. We are a very musical country. It's a very rhythmic country, so music there is everywhere. But sometimes the same thing happens that is so advanced that is ununderstood in the rest of the world. Like modern Cuban music, what we know as timba and things like that. For example, in the Western world, it's like Martians music or something like that. People don't know where one is. And that is something I am totally against. You have to make everybody know where one is, even if you're not playing one. If you're not playing ever the bass drum on one or nothing on one, but people have to feel that one is there. So they get connected to the music somehow. But when you see an audience that is wondering where is the main beat of these to dance, and they know it's dance music. Everybody knows it's the most danceable music, but you don't know where to step on your feet because you don't know where one is. That is not good, you know.
That's really interesting because I mean most music in general, was, even including jazz, was dance music, and then it became an art form that's not danced to. And I wonder if Cuban music now it is such a complex music. I mean, I know when I was writing my book that you know I wanted to document what was going on and understand it, and then it was all dance music, and it's all based on if you look at cha cha cha, there's a dance that goes with that. And then the danzón, the same thing. But you're right. This idea that the new, I mean, after songo that was developed in the 70s, there's no dance that goes along with that. And timba, certainly. But it's a high art form of very complex rhythms and harmonies and arrangements. I mean, we even put in my book, we recorded two tracks of Piloto and Climax. And he's the guy in the timba world. And to dance, I think you can dance to it.
Oh no, you can dance especially if you're Cuban. You know? Yes. If you're Cuban, you're the only one that knows where one is. You know, I'm not talking about in Cuba. I'm talking that in the rest of the world. You know, in Europe, in Canada, in the United States, and everywhere, people don't understand it. It's a very interesting thing to see because they are all large bands with very, very tight horn sections and very tight percussion sections. So when you see it, you know that this is an organized thing. This is not free jazz. You know, this is something that it has a beat, but where is it? The question. Yeah, we know we have a beat. We know what they do, and we see even them dancing on the stage. But they dance on 2 and 4. So where is one?
That's interesting. When you say big bands, I mean, they're like 14, 15, 16 musicians.
20. Yeah.
20, yes. And I guess maybe it's just a question of time or that music being heard as much out of Cuba.
I don't know, because you've had Cuban music. Let's say this is not a very good commercial moment for Cuban music. It's not too much happening like it was, 10 years ago, like it was under the boom of Buena Vista Social Club. You know, that many bands, many musicians from Cuba and from the Cuban music palette got benefits from the Buena Vista boom, and they were playing concerts all over the world and traveling a lot. Now it's a little bit less. It's a lot less.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I'm seeing groups like Havana de Primera touring. And,
right. It's like 2 or 3. Havana de Primera, Los Bamban. But still, Saint Piloto don't do too much, for example. You know, that maybe 15 years ago was a lot busier than today. It's like, I don't know, seems like a boom of Cuban music. This is not the moment for it. You know what I mean?
Or is it also because there are so many more bands that are out there?
And also because Cuban musicians had spread all over the world. So every major city in the world, every single one, Oslo in Norway, or you name it, I don't know, it have 2 or 3 great Cuban piano players, 5 percussionists, a bass player. So it's Cuban musicians all over the world that they had made bands, very good bands. And now it's probably less need to bring a band from Cuba in order to hear Cuban music. You know, you have it right here. So
right. No. And I had that experience in China where many of the Cuban percussionists and musicians, certainly percussionists that I know, that we know, or in our community over there, all of a sudden show up at our event in Beijing or Shanghai.
Yeah.
And they've been living there. They speak Chinese, and that's really. But the nice thing is, I think more and more people this way are beginning to understand Cuban music a little bit better.
Definitely, and you can see it right here. I felt that these last 2 days of classes that people were familiar. I mean, the Clave, you say the name, the Clave, 20 years ago, and we're like, what? What is that? Everybody knows what the Clave is now. I mean, it's like a familiar talk.
Right. And more, and certainly many of the people who have been in these classes have come to KoSA Cuba, and some of them have my book, some of them are students or in the community, and they're I mean, I think it's more out there and properly channeled so that they understand it better, I think now.
It is an incredible thing what you have achieved to unify, through KoSA. Put many music worlds together, China, Cuba, Canada. Yeah, I mean.
And then all the players, because we even brought Changuito up and
the people you have had through the years, which is a great thing too. That sometimes no, every time you bring anybody here, any of the teachers, I'm sure that encounters another teacher that they hasn't been together for 10 years or more. Like it's the case of Glenn Velez and myself. I haven't seen Glenn maybe in 5 or 6 years. We did some other percussion camps, and now we are together here. So it's great. It's always a family reunion, You don't know who you're going to encounter till you get there, but when you get there, it's all happy faces. Yeah.
Right. And it's great. We had Nani Assis doing a whole Brazilian thing, and Arthur Lipner, who was also a KoSA faculty, and just mixing all of these genres is fantastic, and then taking people up to another level.
Right.
And also learning subtleties. Once you know the music, for example, in Brazil and in Cuba, it doesn't always have to be like super loud, super fast. It could be subtle, it could be soft, and it could be very delicate, with nuance.
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. What are the another question I have for you in this day and age, as a professional percussion and musician, what are some of the things that you would recommend to people coming up at this moment for living in music?
Wow. That's a very interesting question too, because I truly don't know what to say. I mean, New York City, that was the mecca of the music, that is still the mecca of the music, these days I think is full of great musicians. It's so many musicians, and every month is a few less places to play, and so I don't know where music is going in that sense. I think it's very hard to become a musician these days for young people. I mean, it's only one way. You have to be an outstanding professional, no doubt. I mean, you have to master your craft as much as you can, every single day, as many hours as you can. But that doesn't assure you that you're gonna make a living in music. I mean, some other people, or many people now goes into the teaching world, But the truth is that when we are kids and wants to become a drummer or wants to become a trumpet player, the very last thing we have in our mind is that we have to end in a classroom teaching classes. It's not that we don't like it. I love it personally. I love it as another thing I do in my life. But my dream was always to be a musician, to be on stages and to play with bands and with people. And I see that every day that scene gets smaller, and the amount of musicians gets bigger. The amount of good musicians, actually, very good musicians, is bigger, and the scene is smaller. So it's like, I mean, unfortunately, we have to talk about money, but it's always less money involved in what we do. I mean, especially since technology changed it, and computers came into the game and all of that, I mean, forget it. I mean, no bands. It's a DJ. It's a DJ that is making probably 20% of what a band was making. But of course, 20% for one guy is a lot of money. But still, it's only the 20% of what was years ago, you know. So,
and then I think then what people in general will have to be open to is be more capable of doing many other things to sustain, becoming a professional, and having other interests that become that create income streams.
Right. It's maybe a sign of the times, you know, that now to be a musician means that you are a music teacher, that you are a musician performer, you are a million different things that are not only you're an instrument player, a player, you know.
Right. But probably, I have a funny feeling that it's the same in most fields. I mean, I think even a doctor.
Right. Exactly.
Is
society in general.
Yeah, that's my feeling, and I think it's not such a scary thing for music. Also, we have to invent situations and opportunities, so that we can, you know, do what we want to do. And I think that's a general thing. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah. For sure, I mean, I'm not saying this to discourage anybody, because I believe that you gotta go for what your heart tells you that you want to be, and you have to go as deep as you can. And and I mean, I think that's the only way to succeed in anything in life, you know.
Yeah, no, for sure, and I think that holds true for practically anything.
Right.
The levels are higher, the more people are more interested in this, and so we have to be at that level, generally speaking. And because technology has brought us to a place where we can clearly see like the world in a minute, make the rounds, so everybody's aware of everything at all times. So the pressure's on to be at that level. Which is nothing wrong with that. It just means more practicing, and more being organized,
Definitely.
more being professional about
Yeah.
even the business side of things. You have to be on, which is not necessarily a bad thing.
Exactly.
And also learning to compose, learning to you know, deal with music on the other end more.
No, you have to open your mind to a million things, definitely. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Horacio. This was great of you to join us again. Always a pleasure to see you wherever our paths cross.
We're going to China. Soon we're going to China.
Thank you.
Thank you.